Well, that's exactly what jumped off the page at me. Why would an AD gather, much less quote, any statistics about one sport-specific athletes? I mean, I've never heard of that before. Have you?
No, it's my first time at all. I think the biggest thing to remember that a lot of coaches sometimes forget is that these are just kids. They love their school. They love their sports. They want to play. That's what their goal is. They want to play. They want to be successful. But they're just kids, and sometimes these coaches tend to put extra pressure on these kids to perform in that sport, and they're very influential at this age. So when their mentor, their coach says, I want you to play one sport, these kids may try to do that, and it's not fair to the kids.
Yeah, they're impressionable. And again, I've heard about comparing athletes to non-athletes like you do, and every athletics director does. I think athletes and coaches and ADs take pride in the fact that instead of challenging, well, there's not enough hours in the day, student athletes tend to perform better scholastically, and I think that's great. But why would this guy quote stats about one sport-specific athletes? I mean, it made me wonder, and you know what? Other people were wondering too. In fact, the president of the Board of Education in Lakewood, a guy named Ed Markling, he asked Thayer why, after repeated requests, hadn't the board been given data to see how many students were playing multiple sports in order to determine how well these athletes were performing, both on the field and in the classroom. Now, apparently, Markling didn't really get a good answer, so he proceeded to bash. I mean, this guy went on the offensive, and he bashed what he called the unwritten philosophy or ideology among the Lakewood High School coaches, which discourages students from playing more than one sport so as not to fall behind in their respective program that typically runs year-round. Now, this guy Markling, again, relentless. He didn't seem to let up, and he went a step further, saying that he had heard from parents and students that coaches have gone so far as to threaten to bench or even cut athletes who ignored this request to stick to one sport. Now, I personally find it kind of amusing that you make a threat to bench or cut a kid, and they refer to it as a request to stick to one sport. I mean, you're an AD. What do you think of that?
Well, we've been in the Berkshire League for over 20 years right now, and we deal with the CSC conference, and I've never heard of such a thing. I mean, just to bench a kid, I think any administration from the leagues that I've been dealing with would go berserk on this. Positively. You can't threaten a kid. Once again, they're kids. And so to tell a kid that you're not going to play a sport, you're not going to start your main sport because you want to play a secondary sport, it just wouldn't fly.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with offering. I don't think there's anything wrong with offering 12 months a year training and accessibility to the facilities and all that other stuff. I think that's fine for the kids who choose that. I think making it mandatory or disguising it as best you can that it's mandatory is really a problem as far as I see it. Now, another board member in this meeting chimed in with some supporting sentiments and some affidavits from a parent and a student about similar accusations against certain coaches. And the AD, this guy Thayer, responded by saying, and I quote, "Let me say this, high school sports in general, and it's just not in Lakewood, the demands on the student athlete are becoming greater and greater and greater. Every sport is becoming year-round. Football, baseball, basketball, everyone. Now coaches want to win, and they want to compete. So yes, they want kids to participate fully in those programs." Now he went on to say, now that's different from saying, we don't want you to play baseball because we want you in spring workouts for basketball. Quite frankly, I've not come across any scenarios where it's been proven that a coach has said to an athlete, we don't want you to do this, we don't want you to do that. This is the part that starts to piss me off a little bit. Reason I say that, and you got to tell me if you agree or not, and this is about human nature more than sports. Whenever somebody's first line of defense against an accusation is to talk about what can be proven or not proven, what does that tell you?
It sounds like once again, they're just trying to defend their cause.
It sounds like they're guilty as hell, yes. Is what it sounds like to me. This particular subject quickly, well, I shouldn't say quickly, it did switch over to gender equity between the boys and the girls' sports and what Thayer was doing to help stem some ineligibility among the athletes. And here's where the story starts to get a little bit sketchy as far as I'm concerned, because at this point, the superintendent of the schools, a guy named Joe Maddock, spoke up and, according to the article, diffused the subtle tension in the room and said that more facts and data needed to be provided on all these matters during an upcoming regular meeting before judgments and conclusions could be reached. Well, way to go, spineless sap. You political beast, this guy Maddock. This guy Markling seems to have this AD in a corner and asking him really pressing questions and ones that should be answered. And then what does the superintendent do? He lets him off the hook, and I think that's kind of pathetic. I mean, you're the AD. Is there accountability at the AD level to start answering these questions?
By all means. In our system, and once again with the Berkshire League and the CSC conference, we all answer directly to our assistant principals and our principals and our local board of education. So we are definitely under the watchful eye of everyone in the school, and of course you're held accountable to the parents. And the parents are very vocal, as they should be. It's their children. So if they see anything like this going on, it's their responsibility to speak up. So I know in our system, the ADs that I've been exposed to are held accountable, by all means.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It seems like this guy was kind of weaseling around and finding some wiggle room, and I think, unfortunately, the superintendent stepped in and gave him all that he needed. Folks, we're gonna get to a quick break, and when we come back, we'll take your calls and your emails. The email is heycoachtony@gmail.com, and the phone lines again are at 855-HEY-COACH. But before we go to break,
Coach Tony.
Hey, folks, we're back, and you're with Hey Coach Tony this fine Saturday morning. Forgot to wish you all a happy Memorial Day weekend. By the way, I also forgot to send my best wishes for good luck to my youngest daughter, Dominique, who is traveling out to Long Island with the FC Somers Stingrays for the Bethpage Memorial Day weekend tournament. Apparently, they're winning the first game 2-0, and we may get a phone-in update or two along the way. We are joined in studio this week by Ray Tanguay, the athletic director from Wolcott Technical High School in Torrington, Connecticut. And we just finished going through this story about the athletics director in Lakewood, Ohio, who seemingly is fostering an environment, a culture of sports specialization. Now, there's more in the article. The article continues on with some more points, but I don't think it's anything really worth delving into. I think the real question here is, have you had any exposure to coaches who insist or even threaten you if you play another sport rather than focus your efforts on his or her particular sport year-round? Well, I want to know what you think, so give us a call here in the studio at 855-HEY-COACH. Now, Ray, in general terms, what do you make of this? Have you ever come, obviously not in your program because you're the AD, but have you ever come across any coaches that really do kind of put the full court press on when it comes to specialization?
I haven't come across that in my school. I know every coach wants their kids to participate in travel leagues. They want to go to summer camp. So I know our coaches always offer them to our kids. But the past couple of years, as you know, the economy has really put a crunch on the entire American society. So we've seen a big downfall on that just because are you going to send your kid to camp? Are you going to pay the mortgage? It's kind of a no-brainer. So that issue for us has kind of dropped by, dropped off by the wayside. But every coach, of course, encourages their kids to play in the off-season and go to camp. But I haven't seen it to the point where you're not going to play, you're not going to make the team, Now,
do you have any children of your own?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I have 700 Monday through Friday.
Well, that's
weekends
plenty.
To myself.
I will tell you that, speaking as a dad rather than a coach, I know it exists, and the real issue for me comes down to the individual kid, because there are kids who fall in love with the sport, and there are other kids who just absolutely look at it as a buffet, and they want to try to sample as much as they can. Now, if you have a kid, what would your advice be to a young kid or a parent, let's say, of a young kid, even let's say a freshman that comes into your school, who seems to not want to specialize, but the parents tend to think that little Susie has got a real future in volleyball, let's say. What's your advice to the parent when you see the kid that maybe is a little bit hesitant?
I always resort back to the numbers. I think the recent numbers are 3.3% of high school athletes go on to play in college, and 1% of that 3.3% get to go higher beyond college. And I just go to the numbers. Look, those numbers are astronomically low. So let the kid be a kid. let him or her play 3 sports. And then when you look at colleges, it's even tougher now because you have to find one base that fits your academic needs first because you're a student athlete. So the student comes first. So you got to find a school that has your major. Then you have to find a school that has your sport program. And then you got to find a college that then fits your financial needs and is within travel distance. So when you look at those numbers, that's why that 3% number is there, because it's hard to get all those factors in place. And so therefore, I highly recommend that the kids participate in multiple sports and stay away from specialization. I've seen so many kids over the years, and I've been in this business now for 14 years, that and I have some kids who have to specialize on their own. I'm only going to play basketball. I play AAU basketball. I play rec league basketball. I play summer league basketball. I play basketball for the high school. And they graduate, they don't get into the college that they were looking for, and really never touch a basketball again. And it's like all those 4 years where you could have experienced another sport, another team, different experiences, you kind of wasted because you were focusing on basketball, and it never materialized after college.
And you know,
after high school.
Well, you bring up a great point. You know, who's to say that your kid? Let's say your kid is a great basketball player. That's fine. How do you know they're not going to be a better baseball player? How do you know they're not going to be a better soccer player? And again, especially at these young ages, the specialization, I'm telling you, at young ages it comes more from the parents and the coaches than it does the kids. Because I've never met a kid that doesn't want to try to play something.
Right.
So why do you think? I mean, let's try to get to the bottom of this. Why do you think parents? I know why coaches insist on specialization because they want their team to be as good as it can be. Why, as a parent, do you think someone might? And again, without kids, you know, I'll let you off the hook if you're really good off the mark on this one. But why would you think a parent would want their kid to specialize?
As any other AD and coach, I do a ton of reading, a lot of coaching clinics and so forth, a lot of times, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, sometimes the parent is trying to live their lives or relives their high school athletic careers through their kids, you know, and therefore they want their kid to be the best, and every parent wants their kid to be the best, just like every coach and teacher wants their kids to be the very best. So therefore, their parents believe and truly believe that they're doing the right thing. You know, I want my kid to be successful. I'm going to give my kid every opportunity to be successful. So I'm going to get the kid into travel league. I'm going to get the kid into AAU, into fall league, into
But
winter league.
what is you say successful, and that you're kind of getting to the heart of the issue as far as I'm concerned. What is successful? How do you gauge success for a kid that age? Again, think through the eyes of the parent. I know that like I said, I'm going to let you think outside the box, but think through the eyes of the parent, and I think the answer is going to really surprise you.
It depends on how you look at it, but I think a lot of parents, key the success for their kids on a sports team is let the kid play every minute of the game, let the kid play every minute of the game and win. And because it's their kid, they love their kids, and they're supposed to. So, and sometimes they realize that on a team concept, if the kid's not performing, he's got to sit or not play, and it kind of, the emotions get involved. You know, you're taking opportunities away from my kid. The coach is the reason why my kid's not playing. The coach is the reason my kid will not play in college because you're not coaching him properly and so forth down the line.
And you know what? To this day, it's still. You mentioned one that you nailed right on the head, which is this whole idea, and it's become cliched, where we as parents live vicariously through our kids. And I think we all do that to some extent. I'm guilty of it too. I watch my kids achieve and succeed, and I take tremendous pride in it. And you know what? I have 2 daughters, so I can't really relate directly. But when my son plays baseball, and he has, by the way, he just finished a great modified baseball season. He hit the snot out of the ball, and I just had such a ball watching him. So there's a fine line between taking pride and going that step further where you're expecting the recognition, where the other parents will say, wow, your kid's doing great. That's where I think it starts to get a little crazy. And the other one, and this is the one that really gets me, I speak all over the country about issues like this, and I quote the numbers. Yeah, less than 5% of all kids will play anywhere Division I, II, or III. And those numbers are actually going down a little bit. Like I said, they're probably closer to 3-4%. And of those, scholarship-wise, less than 1% of all kids that play varsity sports.
Yep.
And then you talk about those that are going to go on and become professionals, and it becomes my audience turns into from enthusiastic folks to like they were sitting in a funeral. But after that, I'm telling you, it's still amazing how many people, how many parents still fully expect that their kids are going to get scholarship money to college, and they think that specializing in a sport is going to maximize their opportunity to do that. What they don't realize, by the way, is that nothing could be further from the truth. Now, I'm having a ball here with Coach Ray Tanguay, and we're going to have to go to break in a couple of minutes here. But before we do, I want to remind you that Ray Tanguay, the AD from Wolcott Technical High School in Torrington, he's in studio with me this week because he was nominated as somebody who knows his stuff and speaks his mind, and that's something that always works great on the show. So in recognition for being such a great guest and for all that you're doing for our kids, Coach Ray gets himself a Hey Coach Tony t-shirt that I'm holding up for our folks who are watching on YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you.
The t-shirt is courtesy of Signature Marketing of Connecticut. So call my friend Jennifer Holguin at Signature Marketing. She's at 203-232-0868, and she'll help you design the perfect promotional products for your company or your organization. Whether it's a great T-shirt like this one, or the coffee mug here that I've got here in studio that I found after somebody tried to steal my Hey Coach Tony coffee mug, or any of a number of different promotional products for your sales meetings, your golf outings, your charity events, Jennifer Holguin and her team at Signature Marketing can do it all for you. So call Signature Marketing today at 203-232-0868 or visit them on the web at www.signaturemarketing.com. And remember, if you or someone you know might be a terrific guest on the show, just shoot me a note at heycoachtony@gmail.com. You can also call the Hey Coach Tony hotline at 855 Hey Coach. That's 855-439-2622. Before we go to the break, though, I did want to give you a quick minute to kind of give a little. Apparently, one of your athletes, a gymnast at your school, has recently secured some accolades for herself, and I read the story, and that's how you and I first met. Let's give her a quick couple of minutes if you'd walk us through this young athlete and what she's accomplished.
Sure. Her name is Michelle Markell. She's a senior at our school in the Health Technologies program. I'm going on to college next year for pre-med. I've known her almost 13 years because her mother also works at our school, and she's been very involved from 13 years ago with our Christmas with Santa Claus breakfast that we have and Thanksgiving dinners, and came to our school and has been on our cross-country team, on our track team, on our cheerleading team, but her big focus has been gymnastics. And what makes her so special is that she was a team of one. So when our other teams, when you're having a slump, you have a whole body of people to work with you to boost you back up. But she was a team of one following the Farmington High School schedule. So when she was in a slump, she only had her to rely on herself to pick herself up. And she's made All-State team second team. Last year, she made the All-State team in 2 or 3 different events this year, and also made Academic All-American this year, which is a dedication to what she's done. I mean, she's just a wonderful, wonderful young adult involved with our Honor Society program, organizing a whole bunch of food drives and basketball tournaments and handball tournaments and dodgeball tournaments. So she's just an absolute wonderful, wonderful kid.
And what's her name again?
Michelle Markell.
Well, Michelle Markell, I guess we'll kind of throw caution to the wind, and we'll name you the athlete of the week this week as well.
Congratulations, Michelle.
Yeah, Michelle, that sounds like you're doing a lot of things for the community there, and that's the kind of kid you certainly want to have in your program representing your school. So congratulations, Michelle. Terrific accomplishments, and I think that's outstanding. All right, you know what? When we get back here, we'll talk a little bit more about some sports specialization, and then we're going to move on to the nightmare that has become the travel tryout process. So stick around.
Coach Tony.
Are with Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio this Memorial Day weekend, joined in studio by Coach Ray Tanguay from Wolcott Technical High School in Torrington, Connecticut. And, we're going to talk a little bit more about this specialization, because just when I think we're off the topic, we go to break and me and Ray start talking some more about this. So there's, let's just chat in some general terms. First of all, one thing I wanted to ask you, do you have any data about the amount of kids in your school or throughout the district who do play multiple sports?
As far as
how many, is there anything tracking who the single sport specialized athletes are versus the percentage that are playing multiple sports?
In our school, I don't have those exact numbers, but I do know for Wolcott Tech that we have about 110 total athletes means we have 110 kids participating in our program with 170 to 180 total spots, which means we have a ton of kids playing multiple sports.
Okay.
So the kids that play single sports are not as great as the kids that play multiple sports.
So you can argue that almost half of your athletes are
Multiple sport athletes.
That's great. Hey, I think that's terrific. Now, what's your personal opinion about specialization in a single sport?
I personally am against it. I think kids need to experience different levels of sports, different type of sports, different programs. I think it's really important to them. I think it's critical. And we spoke of this at the break. I think a lot of times that the parents will forget sometimes over specialization will create a big burnout rate.
Well, let's talk about that, because you and I started picking on, we started talking about burnout, and we started picking on soccer. And again, I used to jokingly tell my kids, don't play soccer, it's a communist sport, and I would joke around with stuff like that. And now I have a very serious soccer player in my family. Like I said, she's out in Bethpage today. But you said that you're starting to notice a trend in soccer in particular. What's happening?
There was an article I read about 3 years ago in one of the Athletic Director magazines about burnout in general. And about 3 years ago, soccer was the #1 burnout rate in high school. And the reason for that, what the article was saying, was that these kids are playing soccer. They're playing fall league. They're playing winter league. They're playing summer league. They're playing spring league. They're playing rec league. And it's soccer, 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 soccer. And then by the time they get to high school, they're soccered out. Because now they're coaches in high school. What you want your kids to win. You want to give every one of your athletes a successful season because you want them something to remember for the rest of their lives. So you're going to push them even harder. At this point now, the kids have just had enough of this, and they just walk away because the fun stops. And if you talk to a lot of high school athletes, and at our last 2 AD conferences ago, a gentleman came in and spoke to us about the reason why kids play high school sports across America and the reasons why they quit. And the main reason why kids play is because it's fun.
So conversely, why do they quit?
It's not fun.
Kids are so simple. People are writing books about burnout and specialization. And you know what? I sat down to write a book on specialization. I said, I'm going to get this right. My book was a half a page long. It was actually less than that because it's exactly what you said. Kids quit sports for the same reason they quit piano or chess or anything else. Kids are driven by one thing primarily, and that is fun. When it's fun, they will go out of their way to do it. They'll run through a brick wall. The
Absolutely.
day it is no longer fun, they will drop it, they will turn and run, and they will never look back. Now, I continue to joke around with soccer, and I've become a fan of the sport because of my daughter. But I will tell you, there's a major problem with soccer that leads to this premature burnout. And it's simply this. A good buddy of mine was a professional soccer player, and I would joke with him and say, hey, you can teach any idiot to run and kick. I don't really mean that, because if you're really going to play soccer like any other sport, you've got to develop skills and strategies. But having said that, because soccer at the rudimentary level is really running and kicking, you got kids that are coming out of the womb and lacing up cleats, because as soon as you can walk and run and kick, you can be in organized soccer. And it's the only sport where you can do that. You don't see 4-year-olds playing baseball.
Right.
You don't see 4-year-olds playing lacrosse. You don't see 4-year-olds playing football or hockey. You do see 4-year-olds, literally 4-year-old kids that are playing soccer. And it's organized, and parents are going nuts, yelling at when the embryo league is playing. They don't have patch referees.
No.
They don't even have high school age referees. They got kids who play in 6th and 7th grade that are reffing these games, and it's nuts. Like, these people can't wait to get their arms around a competitive environment that they can, I guess, vent their Monday through Friday crap out on a sports field. So if you think about it in terms of that, not only is the burnout because it's not fun, they can just burn out quicker because, again, if you're specializing in a sport that you started at the ripe old age of 4 years old, boy, you better be doing something really special if you're keeping it fun for that kid. What do you think?
Oh, I agree. And you also got to throw in there, too, is soccer is one of the sports that you can play year-round from 4 years old on. Because when the winter comes, there's now indoor soccer. There's a ton of indoor soccer facilities. And once again, like yourself, soccer is an amazing sport. I mean, the athleticism that's required to keep that stamina for that time is just incredible. But all these factors just lead right into burnout for these kids.
Yep.
It's just nonstop.
Well, there's another thing that I wanted to talk about, because another reason that I'm a strong advocate against sports specialization, especially at the younger age levels, is there are reams and mounting reams of information about repetitive motion injuries.
Yep.
That come from sports specialization. There's the idea of giving your body a rest. There's the idea of using other sports for complementary muscle memory, complementary skills. Let's face it, I played baseball my whole life, and I chose to specialize after my sophomore year of high school. That's when I turned off every other sport. I knew I could play in college. I was good. And so I chose to do that. But I will tell you, for example, as a baseball players, we're not in the greatest shape. I mean, look at Prince Fielder. Guy's a fat slob, but he's one of the most respected hitters in the game. Baseball players can benefit from that cardiovascular endurance that you would build from playing soccer or hoops. Hand-eye coordination from playing football, speed, strength, agility, all the things that, unless you go out of your way to do it, the game of baseball does not lend itself to agility at all.
Right.
It really doesn't. That's something you have to work outside of the game to develop. So going through something like the Nike Spark training that all the football players are doing, all these things go into building you as a very well-rounded athlete. And I think a lot of people are forgetting that part.
And it makes a big difference. I know my best shot blockers on my basketball team are my boys' volleyball players. Because logically in volleyball, we are trained to jump and spike the ball. Well, when you block a ball in basketball, it's the same thing. It's vertical, timing, arm swing.
Yep.
And it's hard to create that in a basketball practice. You don't really, in my team, we don't really practice a shot blocking drill because it's not a big part of what we have to do. We're more worried about offense, defense, ball handling skills, passing skills, press breaking skills. But in volleyball, when you're trained for 3 months to jump and spike the ball, it's a nice, easy translation into basketball season for them.
And you can draw if you look for them, you can draw these parallels in on so many different points. It's not even funny. So whenever somebody talks to me about how much time their kids are spending and how much money they're spending, and I'll tell you, some idiot parents take pride in how much money they spend on personal trainers year round. I simply tell them, you know what, and you better enjoy it now, because I made side bets on kids, and I'm telling you, but by the time they're 14, they're going to be the kids with dyed their hair blue, smoking cigarettes, hanging out at the mall, because they never had any other experience. And my kids, you know what? I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I insist they play multiple sports. I don't even want them to have an off season. My son TJ is not the best basketball player. He's not the most passionate about basketball. But I said, kid, you're going to do something in the winter. You're going to either go track and field and build some strength and endurance, or you're going to play hoops. You're going to do something. You're not just going to sit around. And I halfway don't want him at the batting cages. Do we go every once in a while? Sure. If he's got the itch and he says, Dad, I want to take some swings, then you know what? You can't put a price tag on that. When your kid says, now I miss it and I want to do that, that's the other thing that these parents don't get, and the other thing these coaches don't get. When you specialize in a sport 12 months a year, the kid's mindset tends to be, when am I getting a day off?
Yep.
When you take them away from the sport, and here's where I have another Tony revelation moment. When you take them away from the sport and into something else, they start saying, gee, and my daughter Sophia is the best example. She goes from basketball, the second basketball is over, she is itching. She's tearing the house apart to find her lacrosse stick, to find her softball glove. She just can't wait for the next one. And you can, as a coach, tell me if I'm wrong, you cannot replace, no training in the world will replace the enthusiasm of a kid who cannot wait to get started. And by the way, there's an email that comes in that I'm going to get to in just a minute. But do you disagree with that as a coach?
No, the enthusiasm part makes or breaks your team. Those kids have got to want to play and have want to get better every day in practice. And if you have that with your kids, then your success in your season is to be off the charts. Mm-hmm. If you have a group of kids that just are going through the motions, you're in trouble for that season, because you know what? They're just there to be there. And my spring team with my boys volleyball squad this year, I've got 19 kids who are beyond enthused. I mean, they come in every day. I mean, they're online. They're reviewing game tape. They're coming in. They're bringing articles about what we want to do next time. And they've seen another team run an offense that we haven't run yet. They want to come in and say, how do we change this? How do we can do this? How do we defend this? And but that's all based on enthusiasm. And It's critical to success, but over specialization will cause those kids to lose that enthusiasm.
You show me a kid that's got a private trainer 12 months out of the year who has the I already know this attitude or my coach told me to do it this way versus the kid who comes in with the enthusiasm and is not as talented. I will take the less talented kid with enthusiasm every single time, bar none.
Zero issue on that one. Positively, absolutely. Because those kids got to eat, sleep, and drink that sport for those 3 or 4 months that you have them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that kid with that enthusiasm and that drive, who doesn't feel like he knows everything, well, like we talked about before, will put his head through that wall for you. Well,
and he's not going to be looking for the first day off they can get. He's not going to be praying for the rain out.
That's correct.
All right, listen, I'm having some fun here. When we get back, I'm going to get to that one email that we have on specialization because I do want to talk about that, and then we're going to get into this whole notion of some of the emails that came in about some of the travel tryouts. But before we go, folks, listen, it's getting down to crunch time here. You've heard me talk the past couple of weeks about the Relay for Life. Your town may have signs hung up all over the place about it. It's a great event. I'm getting involved personally this year because a dear friend of mine, Lynette Rannicleve, lost her battle with cancer this past December. As I've mentioned, the last few years of her life, she was incredibly active in cancer awareness. She participated in the Susan G. Komen for a Cure Foundation and gave me my first exposure to this Relay for Life in a neighboring town, Yorktown. Well, this year my hometown is hosting its own first and annual Relay for Life. Lynette Rannicleve's husband, Dan, who's a great friend of mine, along with his kids, and the young football players that he coaches, have started their own team to raise money for this event in Lynette's honor. The team is called Little Men Representing. They're also called LMR because those are also the initials of my dear departed friend, Lynette Marie Rannicleve. So far, there's been a tremendous outpouring of support and generosity for this team, Little Men Representing. And, under normal circumstances, I've told you guys I'm very uncomfortable ever asking somebody for direct donations, but I'm kicking that to the curb for purposes of this particular event. I insist, I implore you, please go to my website, www.heycoachtony.com. The very first thing you're going to see is a great big pink link at the top where you can go to support the Rannicleve family and their team for Relay for Life. This is all for the American Cancer Society. And again, this is working great so far. All I'm asking is this, folks. Click on the link and don't give $1 million. Just give $1. Just give $1. You want to give more, that's great. And I certainly would be appreciative of it, but I urge you, this terrific lady was a source of inspiration to so many of us. She touched so many lives. Please help us find a cure. It's just $1. So again, I urge you, go to my website at heycoachtony.com. Click on the pink link on the front page and just donate $1 to the American Cancer Society. And please help honor the memory of a wonderful lady and someone who I dearly miss. You're with Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Coach Tony.
All right, welcome back, folks. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. I want to wish you all a happy Memorial Day weekend. Joined in studio by Coach Ray Tanguay from Wolcott Technical High School. And we're going to wrap up on this sports specialization thing because there's one or two emails I do want to get to. The one came in from Bob from Derby, Connecticut. He says, Hey, Coach Tony, it seems to me that the kids who specialize in one sport really do seem to have a leg up on my kid when the season starts. It seems to take my son longer to adjust to batting and fielding, while these other kids who have been catching, throwing, and hitting all winter just pick it right up. It makes me wonder if I should at least try it myself next winter. What do you think? Bob, thanks for the email. And believe me, you're not alone. There are a lot of parents who feel this way. Any reactions, Ray, to what Bob's saying?
Not being a parent, but to avoid specialization, but yet still keep your kid active and to spend some quality time. If your kid's having a hard time batting and you feel like your kid might be behind, why not take your son to the batting cages in the off season? Great time to do on a Sunday afternoon. A lot of indoor batting cages in the area. You and your son can go, hit the batting cages, have a bite to eat, spend some quality time together. And it won't be in such a competitive area where he's be playing all the time, but he'll still get the swings in and then spend some quality time with your kid.
Well, I think that's a great point, and I didn't even look at it that way. Maybe it's because my kids get on my nerves and I don't spend that much quality time with them, but I got to tell you, I really don't disagree too much with Bob, at least his sentiment and anything he said. Let's face it, if a kid does work out all winter with a personal trainer, he is absolutely going to be more prepared and will perform much better on day one of the tryouts. But keep this in mind, and Bob, if you're listening, this is the subtlety. Just because a kid hits the ground running doesn't mean that the other kids aren't going to catch up or even pass him. Okay? Especially at the younger ages. Most coaches realize that most of the kids are going to be shaking off some rust, especially during that first week or so of the workouts. That's just natural, and it happens to almost every kid. That's a fact. Again, I think you got to point back to the things we always talk about when we discuss specialization, and you got to decide if it's a good showing. You know, if a good showing the first week of practice is worth the risk of the burnout that you may get. Or how about this? Some kids start the season with a good week. Some of them start the season with elbow pain because they were throwing all winter. So as long as your kid doesn't continue to lag behind, I don't think you really need to do that. Now, again, if your kid says, "Hey, Dad, let's go take some swings," I think that's great. I think that's something that I think is irreplaceable. There's no question about that. There are pluses and minuses to both sides of this equation, and what I always go back to is it has a lot more to do with the individual kid.
Yep.
That's really the state of the matter. Now, there was one other email I got, and I want to read it because it's about a gymnast, and comes from Sarah in Carmel, who says, "Hey, Coach Tony, my daughter's a gymnast, and this is a sport that absolutely demands that your child not participate in any other sport. It's 12 months a year, and it's grueling, hard work on young bodies. My daughter loves it, but I'm not sure if it's fair to her to keep her in just this one all-encompassing sport. What do you think?" Now, again, Sarah, great question. And before I get to this one, anything, since you had this gymnast that you want to talk about on this one?
She has a very good point there, and I have cousins of mine who are also gymnasts. And ironically, as all things come together, is that when Michelle followed the Farmington High School schedule, my cousin Don Batista was their coach.
Oh, really?
So
okay.
It was kind of nice having my cousin work with one of my students. It was a nice family type thing. But I do understand that the amount of work that the gymnasts have to do, and if you ever watch any of what these gymnasts do, it's amazing. Mm-hmm. And the amount of athleticism that they do. I'm wondering if there's any type of if there's any exercises they can do instead of just the training itself.
I'm a little lost on that one. Here's my take on it. And it's not just about the physicality of it. There's a subtle psychological component to this as well. Here's where Coach Tony puts on his PhD hat. By the way, I don't have a PhD, so you can disagree with it if you like. You want to call me 855-HATE-COACH. But there's just something about some of these individual sports that seem to become absolutely consuming. Gymnastics is certainly one example. Figure skating is another one I hear about all the time. Tennis is getting there. Golf, not so much. And that's because of the seasonal aspect of it. At the younger ages, you're not traveling to Florida for 3 months.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're stuck in school. But these individual sports, I think they're very isolating and they're very introspective. And I really don't know why. Maybe more introverted athletes tend to gravitate towards these sports. Don't know. Maybe it's because they're not team sports. Even though gymnastics has teams, when it's time to perform, there's no one else helping you. When you're on the bars, you're on the bars, right? So you don't have to rely on anybody else. And so maybe you spend more time on your own, and maybe you don't pick your head up to see what's going on in the world around you. I'm not quite sure, but I'm going to tell you this one about gymnastics in particular, and this one's based on my own personal experiences, and Ray and I didn't really talk about this. I have experience because my two girls were both, and I say were, both competing gymnasts, and they were both good. First off, let me say I think gymnastics is one of the best things you can do for a young athlete, bar none. It provides strength, balance, power, and I mean it provides it like nothing else. Nothing else in the world can, and that is no joke. Watching these young girls do what they do is just amazing. Ambidexterity, if that's a word, is another one. It means it teaches you how to do things with both arms, both legs. It's another terrific result. Both my girls benefited tremendously from participating in gymnastics. Now, having said that, let me say this. It is indeed an all-consuming pastime. And if your child is going to participate in gymnastics at any significant level, you better make sure that they love it. And she did use the word love it. Sarah said she loves it, all right? It's an expensive proposition, and it is absolutely going to interfere with any and every other sport that your child wants to try and participate in. That is a fact. Both my girls, and I talk about them all the time, they are really good little athletes. They play multiple sports. And once they got to the age where sports were becoming kind of serious, basically the travel age, we found that continuing in gymnastics was simply prohibitive. Unless that was what they were going to do and they had that passion for it, it became prohibitive. It got to the point where if, they'd have to give up on everything else they did, sports-wise. There was just no more room. So these little girls were at the gym 3 to 4 nights a week, 3 to 4 hours at a clip. So how do you fit in lacrosse or softball or soccer or hoops? Or, by the way, schoolwork. This is becoming a major, major league issue for us. So the bottom line is my girls were just too interested in playing other sports, so they arrived at the conclusion, with a little bit of help in the conversation with my wife and myself, but they did get to the conclusion that I personally was hoping that they would. And it's not because I didn't want them to do gymnastics. It's because they didn't have the passion for it. And for it to just be one more activity would have been a waste of time. So they put gymnastics aside, but reaped all the rewards. They did take all the rewards from the years of hard work and training, and to this day, that stays with them as they compete in their other sports. And I think that's great. So if I had any advice to give to Sarah, it would be this. Find out if your daughter likes gymnastics or truly loves it, and whatever you find out from her, support her and give her every opportunity that you can to allow her to shine and to do what she loves. I mean, I don't know how else to say that. Gymnastics, figure skating, tennis to a certain degree, they all fall into that same category. They are very time-consuming, and they are not conducive to, the four-letter athlete.
Right, and I agree with you 100% on that one.
Now, and also, you and I talked about this. You say you have some special awards for kids who are listening wonder what the hell a three-letter athlete is. When you used to play varsity, you would get a letter, literally the letter of your school. I don't even know if schools still do that.
They still do that.
Okay, so that's what a three-letter athlete is. There used to be four-letter athletes: football, track, hoops, baseball. Those were kind of the big ones at the time, when back in the happy days when Fonzie was around. You do something special to recognize your three-sport athletes, correct?
Yeah, we do. If we have a student who comes into our school and plays the same fall, winter, and spring sport for all 4 years, we have a Grandmaster of Sports Award that on the spring season of their senior year at the awards banquet, they're given a plaque with an emblem of their three sports, their name and the years that they were in the school to symbolize their dedication to our school program and our sports program. And we also put their name on a banner inside the gym as well.
So they kind of basically, their legacy is there forever and ever, at least at Wolcott Technical High School in Torrington, Connecticut.
That's correct. In our little family, my goal is to have them come back to our gym in 15, 20 years from now with their kids and say, this is your mom or dad's name on the wall. Here's what I did. And in hoping that I look at the whole family concept, our school is a family, so that they bring that feeling back. So when their kids start playing sports and their kid may want to quit or what have you or specialize or whatever, they now have something to base it on. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult as a parent, when your kid wants to quit a sport and you did quit when you were younger, to say, geez, you have to stay. And the kid says, well, mom or dad, you quit when you were in high school, why can't I? So now they can walk back to our gym and say, see, I didn't quit. There's my name on the wall.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, I think another message to illustrate here is not playing the sport 12 months a year isn't quitting either. And I think that's important.
Yep.
And if your kid feels like he or she is letting you down because they're not hitting baseballs in the winter, you're failing, not your kid. There is so much more evidence that supports that a kid who plays multiple sports becomes a better athlete as well as a better person. There's so much more evidence than those that support specializing at a young age gets you anywhere further along the line. The evidence only does the contrary. It only shows that you're going to burn kids out on a more regular basis. You're going to create resentment. I mean, I see these kids, and I coach in-town stuff too, and I see baseball players that you can tell they resent the fact that they have to listen to yet one more coach. They resent the fact that, listen, I do this all day. I do it 3 days a week for 12 months out of the year. All right, anyway, there goes another quick hour of my life. I really want to offer a special thanks here to Ray Tanguay from Wolcott Technical High School in Torrington, Connecticut. Hey, folks, I hope you enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. And remember, keep the emails, the phone calls, and the thoughts coming. I'm here every week, folks, so join me every Saturday at 9 for Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio.